And good morning, everyone. This is Ken Ripley, and I'm with KFST Radio. And today we're going to be talking with Dr. Gabe Zamora, who is the superintendent of the Fort Stockton ISD. And a big bond election is coming up on May the 7th, I believe, is the election day. And we've got early voting beginning next Monday, the 25th of April, and will continue through May the 3rd. So, Dr. Zamora, welcome to our program today on KFST AM and FM, and also on KFSTradio.com. And I know you want to inform the voters about what's going on with Fort Stockton ISD and about this bond.
Mr. Ripley, I appreciate the invitation to come here and share information about the bond and other issues. Really is an honor. I love Fort Stockton, especially Fort Stockton ISD. I hope that by the time we finish this interview, people come away with a full understanding of what it is that we are attempting to do at this time.
Okay, so before we get into the specifics of the bond, you came back in June of last year, so you've been here almost a year now, but not quite. And so you've made a lot of changes, and you're continuing to try to make changes in the district because you saw a lot of needs, correct?
That's correct. I did start in June, but I was named lone finalist of the district on Cinco de Mayo, which happens to be my mother's birthday as well.
Oh, okay.
So that's coming up. I'd say there are a lot of improvements that we've had to work towards implementing. And without being negative, sometimes things can get stagnant. You know, we get used to doing things a certain way, and the time can pass us by. The day that we stop challenging ourselves and looking for ways to improve the school system for our students, I believe is the day that I will personally have to call it quits. Hopefully that day is still far into the future. I'm going to turn 43 this year, and after having served for nearly 24 years in the U.S. Army and Texas Army National Guard, and nearly 7 years as a superintendent, I still have that hunger to fight to make it a better place, not just for our students, but for our staff. You know, I really do go into it with the mentality that I learned long ago of everyone eats before I do. You know, anything that I can do to sacrifice myself personally to make it better for our kids, our staff, and the community, you'll have my word I'm going to continue to do. The things that we are working at, and some of these are very new, you know, completely new concepts in this state, I know can sometimes seem confusing. You know, why is it that this is occurring? But at the heart of every decision come our kids, their future, and our staff. Mm-hmm. It always goes back to that. Any recommendation that I've made to my school board, all I ever ask them is the same thing that we put in our ad, is for them to make that decision and vote with their heart and with their mind. And I think that if you connect the dots, it will always go back to where that's the answer. You know, to be somebody who is selfless and truly does do it for what is in the best interest of our community and our school is something that I pride myself on. And I hope that others can see that, not just in what I'm saying, but in the actions that we're taking and the changes that have taken place, I believe, for the betterment of FSISD.
Well, you came from Olphin ISD, which is a smaller district, and it's a quite different district. Fort Stockton, of course, has its own unique profile. And so I was talking to you earlier, you've kind of modeled your changes after the things that you see that need to be changed here in Fort Stockton for our unique community.
When I interviewed, I was asked the question why I hadn't presented a 90 or 120-day plan as most of the other candidates, if not all, had. And the reason for that is I believe that everything should be custom-made to what the current situation at a district is. Mm-hmm. Well, there are plenty of plans out there floating around. Look them up online that attorneys, other superintendents have put together, and they sound well. I really do think that what we've been able to do here, as far as something that is tailor-made and customized to the needs of the district, has set us on a path that not only will make it better here at FSISD, but I truly believe will have ramifications, positive impacts statewide and possibly nationally.
Okay, so one of those changes, or some of those changes, include personnel changes and salary changes and so forth. So could you touch on that a little bit?
Ken, we're in a competition. We're in a competition, whether people realize it or not. We are fighting for teachers and staff members, administrators, not just in our surrounding communities and our state, but against other states at this point. Over and over you hear of the exodus of educators that is happening because of COVID and other reasons. I believe that quality of life is important, and we strive to make it to where our teachers feel that they are respected and loved. You'll see them wearing jeans a lot more often than maybe in the past. What we are working right now, salary-wise, for our staff members is to counteract the effects of the current system. And the state does have a system in place, and all one needs to do is look at the cause and effect of what that system is to see for yourself or determine whether you're satisfied with those results. And I can tell you that I personally am not. And working with our team of talented individuals, we've been able to come up with something that we've kind of kept the details on the hush-hush, because we don't want for other districts to straight up copy us yet. I'm sure they will. But in the meantime, what I will say is that there are going to be some teachers next school year that are making more than some administrators just based off of the way we've designed this system. And I think that the impact that this system is going to have is exactly what Fort Stockton ISD needs. For us to be able to lead the way in attracting and retaining our most talented individuals is exactly what the system was devised for, and I believe that the impact that it is going to have, even for our students that look forward to one day coming back, will continually make FSISD a better place and the place to work.
One of the reasons, of course, that I know you decided to make these changes was you felt like academics certainly needed work in the Fort Stockton ISD. Of course, we've had the COVID pandemic, which has affected things as well, but it is academics that is your main focus at this point.
It is indeed, and if one pays attention and you see that currently we have some very talented individuals in the district who are serving as assistant superintendents in a model that is very different. I didn't come here because I read about this model in a book. This is custom made for what FSISD needed. And I think in large part, one of the improvements that was necessary here was a proper mentorship and development program for our leaders. And when you see that each of our campuses, the 5 that we currently have in place, has someone who serves as a mentor, as an assistant superintendent for something that is district-wide, but also to be there not to run that campus, because the principal does and always will run our campuses, but to reflect with said individual so that principal has someone that they can ask for advice on a daily basis. I wish that I had time to meet with each of our principals every day, but they're super busy, and I'm doing what I have to do and putting them in a situation where they have someone that's on campus most of the time that has been there and done that, I believe is instrumental in allowing for them to develop as leaders and for the rest of that campus leadership team to also improve. But beyond that, at the district level, to have 5 individuals that are working to improve and hone their craft at district administration and not have it all fall upon one individual. Just because the prior system was set up as a pyramid doesn't mean we have to keep repeating the same mistakes. While it's still a work in progress, I can tell you that I've been extremely pleased by the wonderful things that these individuals are doing and how they're working with one another to help improve each of our campuses. It is in our best interest that each one of our leaders, someone who jumps up into one of those spots, can continually improve and make that campus a better place to be. I think that this system, especially when you break it down and see that it's actually costing us less than the previous system is superior and will be modeled throughout the state once people understand what it is that we're doing.
All right, and we'll touch on this a little bit more, and then we'll move on to the bond. But you've got a pretty slick presentation here, a little card that has been developed, and it's got a scan code on here, a couple of scan codes. One is for a video, I'm assuming. The other one maybe is to lead you to the district website, maybe to apply. But it says teachers wanted, and stipends as high as $7,500 available. Salary range of $47,000 to $75,000. Great technology, small class sizes, and then another great benefit in Fort Stockton ISD, practically free housing, possible with low rent and all bills paid. Starting pay possible of $67,500. So those are the things that you've got highlighted on this card here to try to attract more teachers and the best teachers to our district.
That starting pay of $67,500 as something that is possible is a world shaker. Now, having just participated in the Angelo State Job Fair, where some of the younger students that are graduating and looking to go into teaching are walking around, I took the opportunity to myself walk around, was offered a few teaching jobs.
Yeah.
So, but what I was doing is I was scouting. I wanted to see what are the other districts doing as compared to what FSISD now has in place for next year. And we by far and away blew every district that was there out the water with that possible starting pay of $67,500. And when you look into, the mega districts that are present, they're districts of 50, 60,000 kids, and you can see that not only are we competing, but we're whipping them. We're whipping them as what the possible pay can be.
Right.
And then to also offer the amenities, right? The Spanish Lodge Hotel that was purchased at the end of last year for the purposes of recruiting and retaining individuals, transitional housing that is extremely affordable, so that they don't have to just get here and be in a rush to find a house or an apartment. If it takes them a month for them to find that perfect house or apartment, then we have facilities where they can maintain themselves. And if they are single and are fine with that type of life, maybe start saving up for the purchase of a home in the community.
Right. Well, our kids deserve nothing but the best, obviously, and so that could certainly increase the pool of applicants that we have and allow the district to choose the very best teachers for our kids. Well, Dr. Zamora, let's talk about the bond election. We have 5 propositions that will be on the ballot coming up on May the 7th. That's Election Day, but early voting begins as early as Monday of next week, the 25th, and continues through the 3rd of May. So people have a big decision to make here, $110 million total, and there are 5 propositions. Can you explain those to us, please?
I sure will, and let me first say that the 5 propositions in itself are a very neat thing because you can see exactly where this money is going to by area. The money must be spent in those specific areas. When we designed the ad that's running in the Fort Stockton Pioneer, we want it for everybody to be able to get something from it, whether it's someone who just glanced and can look at the pie chart that breaks down the percentages of where this money is going, or someone who wants to dig all the way down into what this means. There was information here that I believe did an excellent job of letting our people know what we stand to gain and, who knows, possibly lose if this passes or does not pass. But the 5 propositions, you can see, I'm going to use a pie chart, Ken, 76.36%, or $84 million, is going to be used for educational facilities and or support services such as transportation, right? So all of that money, the bulk of these bonds, are being used to improve our facilities. We have $12 million in Proposition B that is for stadium facilities. That is a new fieldhouse turf track, improvements to the stadium that are much needed. The Proposition C, which is $6 million for FSISD additional employee housing. So currently we have 12 units, 6 duplexes, and then we have 19 rooms at the Spanish Trail Lodge that are more of a transitional type of housing. Then the last is Proposition E, Proposition D, $3 million for technology devices. Now, technology, as far as the infrastructure, applies for Proposition A, educational facilities. But we're obligated to list individual devices, such as laptops and classroom projectors, separately. Thus the reason for Proposition D. And then the final proposition is $5 million for the district's portion of the new recreation center, which we've been working on as a joint project with the city and county.
All right, so let's talk about first the details of the $84 million, which is the bulk of the bond, the educational facilities and transportation. Tell us about what that money is going to be used for, specifically a little bit. We're talking about really improvements to all district campuses, correct?
Oh, yes, sir. One of the things that I did when I first got here in June was I walked every single facility. I went through taking notes myself, looking at what it is that we were dealing with, and some of them look very good. Some of them need a lot of work. I believe that there's not a single one that doesn't need some work. The HVAC projects that we've undertaken using fund balance only got us started. There's a lot of HVAC improvements that need to take place. And rather than just have people hear it from me, in order to be able to show and demonstrate, we hired the professionals, and our website does have a section that breaks down a comprehensive analysis to include a dashboard that tells you what each thing is going to cost to get back to the black, as they say. And we have a little bit over $51 million in improvements that need to be made to the district. And of course, when you have some buildings that are from the 30s and all the way through into, I believe the last thing that was put up was the natatorium, there's going to be some work that needs to be done.
Right.
And the bond proposition under the current set of circumstances at Fort Stockton ISD is just an incredible opportunity because of the way the tax rate will not be impacted. And that's something pretty unique only to property wealthy districts.
Right. And so there have been a lot of people that have asked questions about this. How are we able to keep the current tax rate while passing a $110 million bond? And this is explained in our ads here on KFST, but you might want to explain it to the public as to how, now this does not regard, valuations on property. This is the current tax rate that we're talking about. And your proposal and the board's proposal is to keep that tax rate at the same level.
I'm going to reference the ad again. The let me dig a little deeper part. So we have the school district tax rate comparison, and highlighted in yellow, of course, is FSISD, and you have some districts that I'm sure most individuals would recognize, and what their tax rate is, how much they assess, and also what their taxable assessed value is. That means what is their property within their district boundaries worth. And of course, if you have a larger pie, then you can afford to have a lower tax rate to collect the money that's necessary to educate and maintain your facilities. Now, when it comes to FSISD, you can see that sitting just under $1.13, which, by the way, is just under 10 cents, 9.6 cents less in tax rate from 2019. At the start of last school year, we dropped another 3 cents. That's when I arrived.
Okay.
And because we've been able to pay off some of the last bond early, we've defeased some of those funds, and because we would be able to stagger the way we draw these bonds down, provided that everything is approved, then we can maintain the tax rate at its current level. And if property values continue to increase, then we would decrease our tax rate. In addition to that, the district currently maintains just around $2 million that is allocated for debt payment services. So if there was a shortfall, we come up a little bit short, even then we would not be talking about raising taxes. And with these processing centers, the data processing centers, property values going up, we may be looking at a position where even if the bond passes and everything is going as we project, we're lowering tax rate. Mm-hmm. And that's very rare. It's extremely rare that you can be in a position to push a bond through without asking the people to increase the tax rate.
So you're not going to sell all these bonds at once, and that will stagger these bonds out a little bit, and which will impact the tax rate, keep it at the current levels, in addition to paying off some of the prior bonds. Now, you mentioned in Proposition A, $51 million in renovation plans for the schools. Now, what about the other, the remaining, the difference between the 51 and the 84? What are your plans for that money?
Before I answer that question, just to go back on what you mentioned, mm-hmm. We don't ever have to sell the bonds. So even beyond that, we're not obligated to do it, and the school board has made a commitment that they will maintain the current tax rate or lower it. So what that means is that as we prioritize the projects and bring some of this money down, we're never going to do it as what would they say, the drunken sailor mentality. No, it's going to be something that we maintain total control of to ensure that we can fulfill the promises that are being pushed out at this point. To answer your question, the $51 million, that's sheerly for the facility improvements that need to take place to get our structures back to where they need to be. There are so many other things that need to take place. You know, when you see our maintenance guys driving around in a van from the 90s, well, how much work are we having to put into that van to keep it running? And when you see some of our school buses and other coaches, right, transportation coaches, consistently breaking down, and our mechanics and personnel doing everything they can to get them back on the road, well, when you got 500,000 miles on some of these things, it's time to look at upgrading. And, you know, to go back to what we were talking about with that $51 million, you know, people will say, because I've heard it, well, the district is wealthy. The district has $30 million plus in the bank. But Ken, if we owe $51 million to ourselves, to our own facilities, are we really wealthy? Now, if the bond were to succeed and those things are now accounted for, the district becomes affluent. And if the district becomes affluent, you have a superintendent and me who believes that that money needs to be invested in our people and in our community. You know, we should be leading the way for salaries and for our facilities and for the opportunities that we are offering our kids. And I believe that the plan that we currently have in place to bring back auto mechanics, to bring back cosmetology, to retrofit our career technology education facilities, you know, to upgrade our security, all of the things that you can see here, those are things that are outside of the spectrum of the $51 million. You know, in addition to that, down the road, if everything is looking great, we may look at the possibility of, instead of just saying our kids have an opportunity for an associate degree, why shouldn't those that are most accelerated have the opportunity for a bachelor's degree while they're here in high school? All of those things are possible, provided that we differentiate based off of the ability level of our kids and bring in the right staff.
Okay, so transportation is a big part of that too, obviously, and it says that in Proposition A, not only facilities but transportation. Let's move on to Proposition B, if you will, $12 million for stadium facilities. You know, I've been to the field house many times, interviewing Coach Peters for athletics and so forth, and It is a very dilapidated facility. It's been there since 1962. It is totally inadequate for what we are doing now. Our visiting teams have to dress in our HPE building, which doesn't have lockers and so forth. So talk about the field house that would be constructed with this bond and the other improvements at the stadium.
I think that this is something that is overdue. Walking through that facility and hearing some of the stories that I'll leave that to Coach Peters, who interviews.
Thursday.
He interviews Thursday.
Yes.
I'm sure he can provide some better stories than I can of what they've gone through in that field house. But it doesn't fit the district. It doesn't make sense that you have beautiful facilities like the SEC, the natatorium, even our football field itself. And then you walk into something that is
baseball
so dated.
Baseball, softball, very nice. But, yeah, the field house is very inadequate.
And so what the hope is that a new field house can be constructed and that it can kind of become something that matches what the rest of our facilities are.
Okay.
Now, I'll remind folks that the entire project is only 10.91% in our pie graph of what we're talking about. There are some needed things that need to take place at our stadium. The turf is at the end of its life expectancy. A decade on average is about what it goes. We don't want to wait for our track to get to the point where it's destroyed. What we're hoping is that this field house can also contain a state-of-the-art weight room with the double-decker area that will enable us to kind of use the HPE, right, the health and physical education facility in a different fashion as well, and hopefully upgrade it so that it can become the physical therapy area that a district such as ours needs.
And it will really be in a central location where it, it better fits where our athletes are, at any given time in the day. All right, Proposition C, $6 million for Fort Stockton ISD additional employee housing. We've already made some strides in that area with 6 duplexes, 12 units over there by the Butts Education Center. Also, you've purchased the Comanche Trail Lodge, like you said. So talk about the additional housing that we're talking about here.
This goes back to competing for top talent. There are many districts out there that have either constructed apartments or have houses that they can offer affordable and in some cases free housing to some of their employees. And when you're trying to draw talent, they're looking at what are the perks? Where is it that I'm going to live? So what if you're making an extra $3,000 compared to a district next door if that district next door is giving you housing practically for free? So as I said earlier, we're competing with districts in our region, we're competing with districts in our state and the U.S. Those are the people that we're trying to get here to fill our spots. It is difficult to fill the spots in the right places. And when someone is available, we have to be up there in the market as competitive.
Well, there is a teacher shortage, and to get them to Fort Stockton is quite a challenge. Now, Proposition D, $3 million for technology devices. So what specifically is that?
We for sure have to update each and every one of our classrooms. The smartboard technology that is over a decade old in most cases is obsolete. It's turned into essentially just a projector, so the interactive portion of it is no longer supported. That's something that needs to be addressed immediately. We started to address issues such as our teachers not having telephones inside of their classrooms. We're already down to the last few campuses. We wanted to try it out. We began with intermediate first and then middle school, and now we're almost district-wide. These are things that our staff has to have in order to provide the best education possible to our kids. Of course, spending the money on laptops and that one-to-one initiative for our kiddos, it's going to help if we can use some of these bond proceeds instead of our local funds. And I'm going to let you finish with the last proposition, and I wanted to just briefly hit up on the funding system and the impact that the bond has on the money that we send back to the state.
Okay, $5 million is Proposition E for the new rec center. That's a recreation department center. It is currently administered by the city of Fort Stockton, but the Fort Stockton ISD's always contributed in some ways with facilities and even with utilities, I understand. But the salaries are paid by the city, and then the county has always contributed something, or sometimes they have. Mostly it's been the city and the school, but the county has agreed to, I believe, contribute $5 million to this project, and the city $2 or $3 million, I believe. And then this would be the Fort Stockton ISD's portion of that new rec facility for $5 million for the youth of our community. So that is also a worthy project.
You're right. It's been years that they've been working on developing a concept, an idea that would provide our kiddos here in Fort Stockton the opportunity to learn from a young age and compete, and to be able to house them all in one facility instead of kind of dancing around the different gyms that we have in the district, I think is something that, as you said, is a worthy cause. The $5 million would be used to break down or demolish a portion of the old Alamo School, which is the current rec center, and implement the idea that the rec board has come up with. This $5 million with the 3 and the 5 that city and county officials have committed, I think will make a super facility. And I just want to commend both the city and county officials. I know I made it a personal thing to be as involved with them and for us to work together to make Fort Stockton a better place. And I can just say that they're a class act.
All right, so again, total of $110 million, 5 different propositions will be on the ballot May the 7th. Early voting begins on Monday the 25th. One more time, I'm going to sort of summarize what you have on the ad that's in the newspaper. Bring back auto mechanics and technology programs, including a retrofit of the career and technology education facilities. Upgrade security and camera systems at all facilities and on buses. And we didn't touch on this, but demolish the abandoned Comanche campus, which has been a long time coming. Upgrade student and staff transportation fleet. Repair and renovate existing campuses using detailed comprehensive analysis results. New field house and stadium upgrades. The new rec center with the city and the county. Renovate the high school auditorium, which we really didn't touch on, but that's a part of this as well. Continue upgrades and replacement of HVAC systems. Increase the number of employee housing units. Continue the device initiative for students and update classroom technology. And another point, the money collected from these bonds is immune from the state Robin Hood system, so Fort Stockton ISD gets to keep all that money to enhance our district.
That is the key, right? And that is the limited, very few districts in the state that have an opportunity such as this. Because the way the school funding system works is the taxes that are collected locally are attributed to a school district based on the number of students that you serve. So what that means is sometimes the state sends you money if you don't collect enough taxes locally, but if you over-collect because of the way the system is designed, then the district sends money back to the state so that they can send that money to the districts that are not fortunate enough to be able to do that. Well, Fort Stockton ISD has sent millions of dollars back year after year so that other districts can operate. If a bond passes, the money that comes down when those bonds are sold to the district cannot be taken from us, nor can any of the money from pieces of property such as a school bus be taken either. So say we were to bring in new buses, and some of the buses that we have are still serviceable. if other districts or individuals were to purchase them, that money also stays with FSISD instead of it having to go back to the state. So when we free up some of the money that we're able to keep locally, well, we can do something with that money. We're in a position where that other districts don't have. We can be more competitive with our salaries. We can say that, okay, for the next 10 years, we're going to go a little beyond what we need and focus on what we want to provide the best services for our kids and for our community.
Well, Dr. Zamora, thank you for being here on KFST this morning. Is there anything else that you would like to touch on before? Now, you're going to be on a couple of more times before the election takes place. Again, early voting starts on Monday, so we're going to have two other interviews this week on Wednesday and Thursday morning, and then Monday and Tuesday of next week, and Friday as well of next week.
Mr. Ripley, thank you for the opportunity to come onto the show. I'm just going to end with the same thing that I tell my board. You know, vote with your heart, vote with your mind, and do it with what we know is most important in mind. You know, and that's our kids and our community. I promise you that you have someone in me who is here to do the right thing and to continually fight for all of our staff and students. I hope that everybody has a blessed week. Thanks again, sir.
All right, thank you. And that's Dr. Gabe Zamora, Superintendent of Fort Stockton ISD. We'll be back on tomorrow at 9:04 a.m. with Assistant Superintendents Gilray Madrid and Roy Alvarado. This is Ken Ripley for KFST AM and FM.